Hello, and welcome to what is sadly the final part of the Shitterbowl. Not a particularly climactic conclusion, however, due to mistakes on my part, the game is unrecoverable, so unfortunately there are no more parts. However, that said, I still decided to record basically the same notes that I did before for the first year. This time I went a little further. There's some more information to be gleaned. But yes, unfortunately, there won't be any more parts to the Shitterbowl. However, on the plus side, the players have all elected to do a mulligan of sorts. And so there will be a new series with new nations in a new era. By the time you're seeing this video, that game will be well underway. So you should have no fear about a time discrepancy between these parts. So that, I hope, is a bit of a reprieve. But enough of that. Much like the first video, this is going to be an analysis of just a bunch of different stats that Dominion 5 tells you but doesn't give you easy access to. Really makes it a terrible pain. And since this is the last one, I'm also going to be linking my notes in the comments section, or not in the comments section, in the description. So in case you wanted to double check something that I did, they're not very well constructed, but they make sense to me. I'm just leaving them there for transparency's sake. I mean, I guess you could have watched the videos and done your own notes yourself, but those are just mine. Anyway, not really any reason to look over them because I have them here on the video for you right now. So that's what we're going to be going over. So the turn that we ended on was turn 21, I believe. 22? Let's see. Turn 21. Turn 21 was the final turn that we had. So this represents the board state as of that turn. So I'm sure you've already dissected this. Basically, what we can learn from this is Archaecephaly and Ulm were the biggest, followed by Agartha, and Marignan and Phaecia were small. Indeed, from year one, Marignan and Phaecia have not grown at all. They've really remained stagnant. However, since year one, Archaecephaly, Ulm, and Agartha have also not grown that much. Recall that there's 125-ish provinces, so everyone should get to this top part. Everyone should be at 25 provinces. And what we see is that's not the case. No one's reached that part. We're on turn 21 and people still haven't reached that. This is extremely bad expansion. Like, really no other way to say it. Really wretched expansion on everyone's part. I could do better with all these nations in year one. In the first 12 turns, I could get more than 21 provinces. Not saying that that's like easy or that could be replicated in every single game you play, and especially not the case if someone's invading you and you have to defend yourself. But my point being just that all of this is suboptimal. All of this is bad. Like, all the gold gained, all the losses taken, all the provinces had, and all, so on and so forth, is all suboptimal. And could be improved. That's really the takeaway, is that it could be improved. It doesn't have to be this way. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see the effects of this sorts of thing, but hopefully the next game will go on for later. Anyway, not really much else to say here. This is just sort of a poor performance by all players involved. Marignan and Phaecia sort of have an excuse because they've been fighting for a while, and Agartha and Ulm have also been feuding for a bit. So, but really the biggest loser here is actually Archaecephaly. Archaecephaly is the one who has had the most time, the most free space, the most like gold to build armies and take gray flags, and he just didn't do it. And there's no excuse for that. It's just bad performance. The same thing can be said about literally every other player, though. But every other player had at least something else going on, so it's not quite as bad. So this graph is the total amount of gold that all the nations had at the end of the game, for lack of a better term. This is not including luck, this is not including losses, this is only including the amount of money that you made from taxes, that you made from taxing your population. And so right away, what should jump at you is that compared to the first from year one, Marignan has substantially improved his position, and Archaecephaly has also improved. Ulm fell, and that mainly is because his expansion just wasn't good. It started off good because the provinces he was taking were very valuable, but because his expansion was just slower than other players, he couldn't keep up. He couldn't keep up with Archaecephaly, for example. Yeah, same thing applies to Agartha here. Agartha, I think, was in third place, and now he's lost it to Marignan, who was... I mean, Marignan's been fighting a war. So there's no reason Marignan should have more tax income than Agartha. It just means Agartha failed to expand. Phaecia not only failed to expand, but is also fighting a defensive war, so it makes sense that he has accumulated the least amount of wealth in taxes, because his empire's always been the smallest. He's always had the least amount of infrastructure. In terms of just the amount of resources he's had to work with, it makes sense that he would be at the bottom. As I said last video, though, tax income is not the whole story. So this graph is the amount of gold that each nation gained. What you should take away from this, first off, is Archaecephaly and Ulm, these two nations had luck 3. Marignan, Agartha, and Phaecia all had misfortune 2. I didn't do anything else for luck, but you can watch the videos and see for yourself. Marignan, Agartha, Phaecia routinely had events that were raising unrest, aka lowering tax income, taking their provinces away, aka lowering their tax income, whilst Ulm and Archaecephaly were constantly getting events that were either giving them gold or, more regularly, giving them gems. A big helping of gems. Sometimes they would even get items, too. Really good items in Ulm's case. It's kind of amazing that Ulm got so much gold from luck, because it really felt like, while I was making the videos, that Archaecephaly was getting the better end of luck, but he didn't. He really wasn't. Marignan's here is really inflated, because there was a single event all game that gave him like 1.3k gold, and I think that's pretty lucky. I think that's very lucky that he got that event, and Agartha and Phaecia didn't. Now keep in mind, this graph doesn't incorporate luck, so you don't need to worry about the results here influencing this. This is just straight taxes. But I think this goes to show that misfortune 2 is bad, but sometimes it's not that bad. Sometimes it's not bad at all. Sometimes it's better than luck 3 in terms of gold. It's not better than luck 3 for gem income. No way. But sometimes it can be better if you just want straight money. Now also, this doesn't include infrastructure. Archaecephaly got a lot of free infrastructure that Ulm and really the other players, every other player didn't get. So that's a lot of free money that's not being calculated either. This is just liquid gold. Poor Agartha sitting over here with his -1 gold from getting a lot of gems, a handful of gems for free, or I guess for 1 gold. But I hope you can see there's a real difference. Like, here's the upper end, and here we have the lower end. And this is significant. And gold is not what you take luck scales for anyway. You take it for gems or random events that are positive, like getting your heroes out too. There's a lot that goes into luck, and I think a lot of people really shit on luck, really misfortune too. It seems like just sort of an easy stat to go for. But I'm a hard luck 3 shill, and this really just solidifies my beliefs in that. Oh yeah, this is everyone's favorite chart. This is losses per nation. So just like the other losses graph, this is looking at units lost in battle, also units that died on retreat. And this is not including the next chart, which is looking at mercenaries. Mercenary losses. So basically, these are all like real raw troops that died in battle. And basically, there's not much else to say here that's significantly different from the last one. Agartha took terrible losses this game, followed by Archaecephaly, and then Phaecia. Phaecia really amplified the amount of losses that they took. Mainly, it was just from one terrible battle where they took like a third of these casualties were just in one conflict where he lost like 40 Colossi light infantry and 1 Colossi storm captain. Really damaging, really crippling. Without that one mistake, and it was definitely a mistake. Like that was not a Marignon outplay moment. That was just Phaecia walked his army in and underestimated his opponent and got it killed for free. However, Ulm really didn't take any losses at all, and that is why he still should have a lead over Archaecephaly, that including his luck. He should still have a lead over Archaecephaly, even though he has less provinces, less infrastructure, and is expanding slower, and is currently fighting a war. He still has more gold because he isn't losing his units. And that's something sort of hard to quantify, because some nations really don't have good troops, and you just have to accept losses. Like Xibalba, for example, you just can't play that nation without taking losses. So I get it, losses are inevitable. It's not like the Greek light infantry Peltast or the Agarthan light infantry is exactly a stellar unit that will survive forever. You know, it's no Black Steel Pikeneer. But yeah, no, I mean, like, the numbers speak for themselves here. So this is losses, including mercenary losses per every nation. And what should immediately jump out to you is, oh my god, how did Marignon suddenly shoot up so quick to the top? Well, basically, it's because he spent way too much money on several mercenary companies in a row and crippled his economy in the span of just a handful of turns. Phaecia also spent a lot of money on mercenaries, but consider his mercenaries were doing stuff. Like, he was sending mercenaries to take provinces, a lot of safe provinces too, underwater stuff. He got a lot of mercenary companies thrown away and killed. So that was sort of down the drain, and we didn't get to see all of Marignon's mercenaries go into battle. So, you know, it's sort of a little unfair in that regard. But at the end of the day, the numbers speak for themselves. Like, this is the amount of gold that was burned to fuel these armies. And exclusively because of the amount of gold Marignon paid, he is losing the war against Phaecia considerably. Like, he is losing the war against Phaecia because of mercenaries alone. Not because of, like, particularly bad strategy or poor scripting or bad research. Just hiring mercenaries is making him lose financially. I ran a test battle, I think, or like a simulation or something, after the game was screwed up and unrecoverable, between a Marignan army and a Phasian army, as if Phasia sallied forth from the capital, basically to replicate exactly what it would have been. And it was extremely bloody on both sides, but Phasia ended up winning, and Phasia kept most of his mages alive. Marignan lost most of his Knights of the Chalice. Still, it was very close. And I think, yeah, it just goes to show that war was sort of botched from the start. There was a big gain made with killing those 40 Colossi light infantry, but after that, there was no major successes, and major successes were needed in order to win that war because of just how close it was. This was sort of this result that you're seeing right here is the obvious result. Like, both players sort of fail to decisively beat one another, and so they just slowly, incrementally grind each other to death, whilst the other players are good. Like, Agartha took a lot of casualties to Indies, but he's not, like, he is going to be fighting a war against Ulm. And really, like, look at this discrepancy between Agartha and Ulm. Agartha's got over 4,000 gold less to work with. And that's not including luck. Yeah, if you include luck, he's got 7,000 gold less to work with. Oh, looks like that's the next chart. Well, let's just look at that. Jesus. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, it's even more snowbally than I thought. Yeah, goodness gracious. I was pretty confident that Ulm was winning, but, oh, by the way, yeah, this is net gold. This includes, very importantly, I say very importantly, this includes diplomatic gold, so the money that Archaecephaly and Ulm sent to Phasia is being calculated in this chart. Yeah, I mean, look at the difference between these two players. It's very little. It's very, very little in the grand scheme of things. This is total money, by the way. This is from turn 1. Yeah, it's very, very little difference. This is not the kind of lead that you want if you're going to be fighting someone in a war early game. If this is the research edge you have, that's great. But as we know, Marignan had the worst research in the game. He had the least amount of mages, I think. Maybe, like, he was very close to Phasia in terms of mages. He just had very little because he was pumping out so many paladins. Good in their own right and useful, but just crippled his researching ability. So it's not like he was winning in research either. The war, based on these graphs, and I think based on the strategic situation, was going to go on for another like 10 or 20 more turns with no end in sight. Just a horrible grind for both players that leads neither of them to victory. Just kills both of them. On the other hand, the war between Ulm and Agartha, I don't see Agartha winning. I think Agartha would have been crushed pretty easily. He would have been able to hole up in his capital for a long time and produce a lot of statues, but I don't think he could have won a field battle. He definitely could have won with the support of a fortress. Like, if the Ulmites have to run through a small gap, he can clog them up, earth meld, cast horde of skeletons, whatever. I think that would have won him a battle. That would have won him like a major battle, and he could have stayed alive for a very long time. But no, I don't think there was any hope of him actually winning the war. Just basically staying alive and sort of being an annoyance to Ulm. So really, the only two capable nations of winning were Archaecephaly and Ulm. And as far as I'm aware, Archaecephaly was about to attack Ulm. And I'm really curious how that would have gone down. I want to say Archaecephaly would have got his slapped, beaten badly because he wasn't bringing mages. And you're not going to beat Ulmites without mage support. You need to mind burn them. That's a key way to crush them if you have little magic is abuse mind burns. That's your best tool. It's not your peltasts, it's not your chariots, it's your mystics. It's always mages. So anyway, this is including luck too, by the way. So if you take away Marignon's big payday that he got, he's a lot closer to Fascia in terms of gold. If you remove this nice luck that he got, yeah, he's basically sitting at the same spot. But it's amazing. Just imagine how much more Marignon could be leading. Like, he could have an extra 2,000 gold up on this guy. He could be hovering at about, 19k. Now, that's a substantial lead. That's a lot of troops. That's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of mages that you have up on your opponent. He doesn't have it. He doesn't have it because he recruited mercenaries that didn't do anything. Like, Fascia was recruiting a lot of mercenaries too, but I don't think Marignon needed to be worried about them. Like, some mercenaries are sketchy, but for the majority of cases, they're just chaff that your Knights of the Chalice are just going to slam through, just going to crush. So what difference does it make if he has mercenaries? Who cares? Save your money, build forts, build more troops, more Knights of the Chalice, and run over him. I also think raiding would have been a big help to Marignon. Like, he started to do it sort of at the end, but really it was Fascia who was using raiding to great effect, and that really wasted a lot of Marignon's time. It's not to say that Fascia won great battles off of raiding, but it forced Marignon to move his troops around in an inopportune way that denied him the ability to quickly rush down Fascia's cap and kill him. Because that's what he needed to do. That's how he needed to win, and he didn't do that. He got bamboozled, he got pulled around a lot by Fascia, not sure where to move his troops, and he got punished for it badly. And we get to the point where we're at in the game presently, where now Fascia has a critical mass of mages that Marignon can't really deal with. I mean, he kind of can, but it's extremely bloody. It's really gory for both sides. It's a shame I don't have the battle to record. It's lost to history. But rest assured, 40 Knights of the Chalice could not beat whatever amount of mages that Fascia had. Fascia could win. But it was close. Granted, it was close. Maybe it was just a few dice rolls away from going in Marignon's favor. But still, even if he won the battle, you saw what the wall integrity of Fascia was at. He was not sieging the fort down. It would have been like 10, 11 turns before he cracked the fort. So we're looking at like turn 35-ish by the time Fascia is open. What a horrible, horrible war. Years of fighting for a province that does not compensate you for your losses. Fascia produces like 400 gold. On turn 21, that would have taken you over 10 turns to pay for itself. You'd be looking at like turn 46 by the time that the war, one province finally started to pay up. And that's halfway through the conflict. We're not even including all the other hidden costs of building paladins instead of mages, getting your indie provinces sniped by other players that should have been your clay rightfully. I think this is why early game, or really wars in Dominions 5 are awful, just terrible. You should not do them. They're the worst things you can possibly do. Of course that's ridiculous, like you have to fight other players to win the game, but getting into a long, grindy attrition war with another player is always a mistake. 9 times out of 10, it's a mistake. And it'll cost you the game. And Marignon's choice to fight Fascia when he wasn't really ready cost him the game. Surely cost him the game. If he focused on indies and just took a bunch of provinces and he got big, like he got to this 25 province mark, he would be so powerful. He would be so much stronger than Ulm or Archaecephaly. At least Archaecephaly, yeah, because most of these casualties are in battle against Phaeacians. They're not against Indies. You're not losing Knights of the Chalice to Indies. Archaecephaly's losing stuff to Indies. but, you know, Knights of the Chalice aren't dying. I guess I could just do sort of a retrospective on all the players. Archaecephaly made a lot of money. I feel like Archaecephaly played decently well. His main problems were his expansion just sucked. Which is to say, he didn't push the limits of his armies enough, or he didn't understand the limits of his armies enough. And what I mean by that is, there's a trick to expansion in Dominions, and that is knowing how much you can get away with. And that's not really just a rule for expansion, that's a rule for Dominions in general. It's knowing how much you can push and still find success. And what I mean by that is, maybe for this battle that you're fighting against militia, you don't need to bring 25 peltasts, you only need to bring 15. Maybe you only need to bring 17. And then you can take those other peltasts, those other 10 or 8 peltasts, whatever, and put them in another army, and then you can have 2 armies going out and expanding at the same time. And maybe that works out better. Maybe that gets you more gold in the long run than sending 25 in a big death blob. Because we saw Ulm's big death blob strategy, and it paid out great for him. Like, he got a lot of land very slowly. But Ulm later, Archaecephaly now. Archaecephaly spent a lot of money on infrastructure, which I think is kind of fine, but there's so many gray flags next to you that you need to take. There's no reason that this gap should exist. Archaecephaly was not in a war. He was on his own. He should be big. He should be the strongest, right? Because he's not fighting anybody. He wasn't even looking to fight anybody. So yeah, that's sort of that's the most egregious error, is that his expansion just sucked. It wasn't the worst in the game, but it sucked, and it hurt him badly because of that. I also think his Pretender choice was bad. I sort of helped everyone in this game make their Pretenders, but I don't want that to mean like I babysat them and told them exactly what to take. It just sort of gave them a general idea of what things do and what things can do what. So, like, if you're going to take an imprisoned Pretender, then you can take a big Bless. And that's sort of the meta presently, is taking a big super Bless with an imprisoned Pretender, because if he's imprisoned, you can get away with really good scales at the same time. And it's sort of a broken, unfair combination that the devs, I guess, don't realize. Because you can take extremely good scales and also take a really good Bless at the same time. And it really makes Incarnate Bless choices terrible. So that's sort of information I told to everybody. Archaecephaly, I think, since his expansion was so not good, I think if he went with an Awake Expander, he could have done a lot better. He could have taken a lot more provinces. And with all those extra provinces, he would have a big lead. And he already has a pretty big lead over the other 3 players that aren't Ulm. Like, this lead is very insurmountable, but I'm just saying it could be stronger. I don't think Archaecephaly needs an immobile Pretender who's going to... whoa, my printer just started going off. I don't think Archaecephaly needs like a big researcher guy. I think he can get away with having an Awake Expander because Mystics are so good at researching already. So that's important. Yeah, an Awake Expander. What else did Archaecephaly do wrong? He didn't name... he did name some of his units. Okay, so that was good. I think his research was kind of silly. Like, he just seemed to be researching random stuff without a point. If you're Archaecephaly, definitely you want to go for Thaumaturgy. You want to go for Thaumaturgy all the time. If no one's attacking you, get Conjuration 3 so you can cast Power of the Spheres, and then go straight for Thaumaturgy 5. Maybe stop at Construction 2 if there's like something special you want there. Like, I don't know, Great Sword of Sharpness or something. But otherwise, just go straight for Thaumaturgy. Go straight for Soul Slay. Soul Slay is an amazing spell. An absolutely fantastic kill spell. Maybe not groundbreaking against a bunch of human nations, but it kills them. Kills humans in one hit, kills basically everything in one hit. The only thing it doesn't kill in one hit are Agarthan statues. And Agarthan statues didn't really get the love that they deserved this game. There wasn't that many of them that came out. Which is sad, but regardless. So Archaecephaly and research priorities could have been adjusted for like real goals. He spent a lot of like mage turns doing weird stuff like walking around or building infrastructure, when really the main thing your mages should be doing is site searching, casting spells that win you the game, or researching those spells. And if they're doing something else, hopefully it's building a lab, but if it's building a lab, then have like a crappy mage do that, not like an important one. Have like one of your N1 mages do it, because those ones, they're important. They're healers, they're priests, that's all very good, but they're not contributing to goals 2 and 3 very much. They can contribute to site searching, but they're not as good researchers as mystics, so they're not going to help you get those big spells that kill everything, and they're not going to be able to cast those big spells that kill everything. But mystics can. Mystics can cast like falling fires or whatever, fires from afar, you know, just as an example, or pillar of flame, or whatever else, volcanic eruption, right? So more solid research goals. His scripting also didn't really seem like there was practice in it. Like, the scripting didn't make much sense. You definitely want your javelin throwers in front, so that way they throw their javelins, and then the non-javelin throwers... Basically, okay, so like, you have your two sides, right? You've got your javelin throwers here, and you've got your melee guys here in the back. So you have the Peltas on fire and these guys on attack, so they run up, they throw their javelins, and while they're staying there, standing still, throwing the javelin, the melee guys push up, get in front of them, and fight the guys. If you do it the other way around, the melee guys will get into combat, and then javelins will be imbuing in their spines and killing them. I also think there was just so many times when chariots hit the enemy first. The chariots just need to be in the back, all the way in the back. They're fast. They'll get to the battlefield on time. You don't have to worry about them being late. You definitely don't want them to be early. If they're early, they're going to die because they're going to eat up most of the DPS, the initial burst. And then that's it. Your giant gold investment's gone. You always want to think about units' combat speed, because you want your lines to be homogeneous. You don't want lines hitting the enemy at different times, because that spreads out your DPS and makes you weaker, but it makes your enemy stronger. If he has homogeneous lines, he will hit you with everything he's got at the same time, and you won't. You'll have a lot of units standing around not doing anything, and that makes you weak, makes you weaker overall. So knowing timing is sort of just a innate thing that you've got to get a grip on, you know, just something you just sort of learn by playing. So I get it, trial and error, but that's something that you can just go into single player and just practice for like 5 minutes, and you can figure it out. It's not rocket science to figure out how fast a unit really goes compared to other units on the battlefield. Especially if you only have like 5 or 6 units you can even recruit on your nation in the first place. Just go test it, right? There's only like 6 of them. Who cares? It'll take like 5-10 minutes. You'll get a perfect understanding of it pretty quick. Or if not a perfect understanding, at least a pretty good idea. You know, it's not like I have 1,000 hours on Archaecephaly and I just know that the chariots will always get to the front line first. It's just they're faster. So, of course, they'll get to the front line first. They're quicker. Armies are never right next to each other. Even if you put them as close to the front as possible, there's still a distance they have to path. There was other like minor things that went wrong with Archaecephaly, like wrong mage recruitment, wrong commander recruitment, floating gold, taking battles that he couldn't win. But that's all stuff like, again, that's all stuff that you just kind of got to get a knack for. Just got to kind of know, like, no, you can't take that battle. And granted, that's a lot harder to gauge because you're dealing with a lot of variables, a lot of hidden information, a lot of dice rolls about knowing, can I really beat this enemy army? And I get it. That's tough. That's not hard to, or that is hard to get. But enough of that. About Ulm. Ulm, I think, had great magic. He had great scales. I can't complain about his Pretender at all. In fact, I think his Pretender is the smartest. An alternative choice could have been, though, taking an Awake Expander. I don't think he needed it. I don't think Ulm at all needs an Awaken Expander. You can still do it, and it'll let you take more provinces. But Ulm's biggest problem is his expansion sucked. And I'm going to be a broken record because I'm going to say this about everyone. His expansion sucked. There was no reason for him not to have like 40 provinces by this time in the game. There was so many indies he could have taken. So many indies. And his armies were stupidly brain dead big. They didn't need to be that big. They could have been a third of the size. And they could have just cleaned out indies alone. Just annihilated swaths of them. And they would have suffered no casualties because Ulmites are extremely tanky. So I think that's Ulm's biggest problem, is he spent a lot of time consolidating big death blobs and taking one province a turn when there was no reason to. He could have taken a lot more. His advantage could have been like well exceeding 30k. You know, we could be seeing crazy advantage here, but we don't because expansion sucked. And it sucked for a different reason than Archaecephaly. It's not like he was taking fights that were loss-ridden, because he didn't lose very much at all this game. Ulm lost very, very little. So his troops weren't dying. It's just he wasn't using them. Sort of the same thing with Archaecephaly, right? If you have troops, you want to make sure they're being used, because you put money into those guys, they got to pay for themselves. So yeah, they need to be used. What else is there to say? I think his research was fine. I think his decision to invade Agartha was very eruditic, I guess. Agartha was in a weak position. Ulm saw that he was in a weak position, and he invaded, and I think he would have crushed him, like I said before. I believe he was being diplomatsed into attacking Marignan. I also think Ulm would have crushed Marignan too. So, really, either way, I think it works out. Perhaps Marignan should have been a stronger consideration, just because the Marinese front with Ulm was so tiny, which I'm blown away, because I said in the very first video that I thought there would be a war between the two players because of how close they were, but neither of them took their indies. They just let the indies sit around and let that gold vanish, let those gems vanish, and didn't take them. They should have. They should have taken them ASAP. Immediately they should have taken those indies, but they did not. So the front was really small, so my point is just maybe that should have been a consideration for invading Marignan, is there's not really a possibility for raiding, for flanking. Ulmites do really good when they just have to charge straight ahead and crush their opponent, and I think that situation really favored Ulm. Marignan really just had his cap and nothing else in the south, just sort of walk in and smash it. Also delete that Marinese fort that was going up, still had 2 turns left. He could have destroyed it. That would have crushed Marignan's ability to resist. Really only having 1 fort in the region, fighting a 2-front war, dude was dead, out of the game. But Agartha, also very weak, didn't have a lot of standing armies left. and the ones he did have were out expanding. Smart, by the way. Good move on Agartha's part. But unfortunately, Ulm sensed his weakness or something, and he invaded him, and it was working out pretty good, I think. Other things that Ulm really failed to do were use his indie mages. Ulm's magic sucks. I mean, it doesn't actually suck because Earth 2 is the best thing in the game. You don't need anything else besides Earth 2. But you should always seek to just accumulate more magic, accumulate more ultimate power, more raw power strength, toughness, whatever. Ulm had a gluttony of options available to him. Bone Tribe, Amazons, Lizard Shamans, and he didn't take any of them. He didn't take a single one. Brain dead, brain damaged. Really stupid, really retarded. Absolutely would have lost him the game if the game went late and he didn't make any of those mages. Archacephaly would have crushed him. If the game went late, if the game went later and Ulm was not utilizing those mages, 100% he would have lost the game because he just can't compete. I mean, Earth 2 is amazing. Earth 2 can do miracles for you, but it can't do everything. So eventually Archacephaly, with his superior magic diversity, would have won. I think so. If the game went late. But Archacephaly looked like he was going to be invading Ulm, which, another big mistake. Ulm would have just pushed Archacephaly's armies aside. They would do absolutely nothing. They're just like indies to him, just brush him aside. So that was a completely foolhardy war to go into without mage support. So Ulm abusing his advantage early game to invade someone else, I think that was very smart. I think that was a good move. But his expansion sucked. Not using indies, brain dead, retard gorilla move. And just floating like huge amounts of money, like 2,000, 3,000 gold a turn. The game doesn't have interest. There's no reason to float money. Marignon, I think he had a pretty rough-ish start, like losing battles that he didn't need to lose. Like he actually definitely lost some battles to indies when he didn't have his knights. I think there was one that was a scripting error that killed him, and there was a lot of scripting errors in general that got him killed early. Not as bad as Agartha or Archacephaly, but they definitely existed, and he got punished for them. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is fighting Fascia was a mistake. It kind of looked good at the time, but definitely after like 5 turns, should have just pieced out. Should have just like taken a white piece or taken a surrender from him on some level, and just got out of that war because it was a drag. It was a nightmare, a quagmire, a bear trap that your foot was stuck in and that you could not get out of, and it would have killed you, died of infection. And realistically, already did die. I think Ulm could have very successfully fought a 2-front war against Archacephaly and Agartha. I don't want to say Ulm could have won if he was also being invaded by Marignon, but I have a suspicion that Ulm could have won if he was being invaded by Marignon too. That might be a little ridiculous, but I think Archacephaly's armies were just so weak and so useless against Ulmites that he was just a non-factor, and Agartha had his troops so spread out and most of his gold in mages that he couldn't really fight a lot of big field battles. So I think it should have been a consideration in Marignon's mind to end the war with Fascia and dogpile Ulm, because that's really what needed to happen. Is a global effort was needed to coalition Ulm and kill him, because he was snowballing out of control. Now granted, his snowballing was not very impressive, but he was snowballing. Same thing kind of applies to Archacephaly too, though. So it's hard if you're at the bottom. Marignon's research, he had like a lot of weird research goals that didn't go anywhere, that were just sort of pointless, like getting Enchantment 2 for no reason, just a waste of mage turns.
I said it before. If you're going to go for a big battlefield spell, pick it, pick the spell, and just go for it. Don't waste your time getting halfway to a goal, because then you get no goals. You get nothing. You just waste a lot of mage turns. If you want a spell that wins you a war, just go for it and take it. What else to say about Marignon? It's hard fighting a war, yeah, especially if your opponent has a lot of mobility. Like Marignon has a lot of mobility too with Knights of the Chalice, but Facia was on a big ocean, so he could jump around, and that made it really annoying. So hopefully, lesson learned: fighting someone with superior mobility, or at least comparable mobility, makes the war really hard. If you can outmaneuver your opponent with extra map move, you have a tremendous advantage on them. And that's one of Ulm's biggest weaknesses, by the way, is that they're all slow and fat, so they can't move very fast. And you can move around their big armies, never engage them, and just eat up all their provinces. And they have to sort of come to you. What else is there to say? Yeah, I mean, the assassin strategy is kind of a meme. I like it. I like using assassins for expansion because I think it's cool, but it may not be good. And if you're going to use it, definitely don't spread them out. You definitely just want to consolidate all your mages in one province, or assassins in one province at once, and wipe out all the commanders there, and then take it and move them as a group, because then they're more effective. They'll take more provinces more regularly. You were spreading them out, and sometimes they were killing, sometimes they weren't, but they never eliminated all the commanders. You always had to send in a big army to clean up their mess. I think there was one province you took with assassins alone. Like, that was a lot of gold that you spent in assassins, and you got one province out of it? No way, that sucks. You send assassins to clean up hard to take provinces with your national troops. Not just whatever, because they're expensive. They're not just expensive on gold, they're expensive on fort commander points. They eat up your ability to, produce mages or produce something else that's more valuable. And that really sucks. Not much else to say. So I guess we could talk about Agartha. Most of Agartha's woes come from troglodyte slaves. Troglodyte slaves are sort of the keeper to all of his problems. If he didn't have troglodyte slaves, would he have suffered as many losses? No, definitely not. However, would he have also taken as many provinces? I don't think so. I think the troglodyte slaves provide a real big, meaty fist to Agartha's expansion, their ability to take provinces. So I think they're important. I think it was just scripting problems, just having the troglodytes too far forward. Same thing with Arco's chariots. Having the troglodytes too far forward, letting them take the brunt of the punishment, and that just happened over and over and over and over again. There was like 7 or 8 battles where the troglodytes walked in front because they're really fast, and they got hit with javelins, they got hit with all the Indy spears, all the arrows, and they took a lot of damage. Surely the battle was still won, but it was an expensive victory. And that sort of stacking expensive victory, has consequences. And most of those show up in the losses. Agartha's Pretender also didn't really do anything for him. It's just sort of like the softest, shittiest body ever, or whatever. And the name really held true. It's just sort of like a big fat dude who researched and site searched a little bit. I would have just taken an imprisoned Pretender, because if you're going for a sacred bless strategy on Agartha for your statues, then I get there's some incarnate blesses that you want that would make them good, but looking at this battle in retrospect, or not battle, looking at the campaign in retrospect, maybe imprisoned would have been better. It's hard to say. But what I can say with, some decisiveness
is an Awake Expander would have really helped. Would have really, really helped on going around and taking provinces. Getting an Earth Snake with hard skin, oh, that would have been so wonderful. Because there was so many hard provinces around Agartha's capital. Like, he had barbarians in his cap circle twice. Granted, one was because of an event, but still, he had barbarians twice. He had, like, heavy cavalry up the wazoo. It was not easy expansion for him. It was like the total opposite of Ulm, who was having a cakewalk with his expansion. Agartha's was hard, and if he had an Awake like, sometimes at the end of the day, Dominions is a game of luck. It's a game of dice rolls and chance. You can influence it a lot, but you have to, influence it in your favor. And I think this showed why taking a dormant or imprisoned pretender sometimes is a big freaking risk, especially if your national troops aren't very good. You can get punished. You can get punished badly. And taking an Awake Expander would have been more provinces, more gold, less problems. You would have looked less weak to Ulm as well, so maybe Ulm would not have invaded you. Which is a shame, too. The two players seem to have a friendly Earth-based relationship going on, which I thought was cute, but shame. And outside of that, I think Agartha was kind of fine. He wasn't putting province defense in all of his provinces, which is just always a mistake. There's no good excuse not to put at least one. Especially if you're running Misfortune 2, because you're going to get bad events that take your provinces, so you want to minimize those. So you at least go to 6. If they're a core province, if they're like a frontier thing, then I get it. 1 PD is all you need, because an enemy is probably just going to steal it. But anyway, I thought Agartha's research was great, and I thought Agartha, out of every player in the game, was doing the best of his, was spending his resources the best he could. So he was losing a lot, and he lost a lot in slaves, but even with that, he took the resources he had, and he tried to divvy it up as best he could. What I mean by that is he was spending his gold when he could, where he could, on things that made sense, that had a long-term plan. Not like Archaecephaly's random-ass infrastructure in the middle of deserts that didn't do anything, but like recruiting mages, building labs and temples on forts that he knew he could hold, and getting mages from them. He was the only player in the game who was really spending his gems, outside of a few magical items made here and there. He was spending his gems, and I think that's why he could have really held out against Ulm, because while there's a big gold discrepancy here, Agartha was really compensating for that by spending his gems, which Ulm had a lot of gems, and he was just floating them. I'll show you the gems in a second. But yeah, that's a big gap between the two players. Agartha was spending his gems, and I think if he got Conjuration 3, spent all of his death gems, made more statues, he could have built a big army. He could have built a sizable army that really you would not expect from a nation with this much gold to their name on turn 21. Which just leaves Phaecia. Phaecia had a really rough start. Losing his initial expansion army just hurt his economy bad. His scales sucked. They were the worst in the game. Granted, his pretender woke up at just the opportune moment. So while I would say that taking an imprisoned pretender would have been better, because then your bless could have been, either your bless could have been stronger, or your scales could have been a lot better. And if the scales were better, you could have had more money, more units out in the battlefield, more gems, more research. But instead, Phaecia's scales were, no good. They're just poor. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Maybe an Awake Expander would have been the best thing for Phaecia here, because he really struggled to take a lot of provinces early on. So maybe the extra help of having an Awake super combatant, or if you so choose super competent, pretender could have been better for you.
Colossi Light Infantry, I think, are pretty decent units, and they hold up well against Indies, but it was really sad that they just ran in that one battle, and you lost, like, to seemingly RNG. I've been there. I've been screwed over by RNG a lot. Dominions is a dice rolling game, so you're going to get screwed by randomness one way or another. Oh, God, my throat's starting to go. I've been blabbering for an hour. I gotta wrap this up. So Fascia, expansion sucked, needed to take more provinces, needed to go across the ocean and also take those provinces a lot earlier because those were safe, especially when Marignan was invading you. Those provinces were safe. I think it could have been done a little quicker. Mercenary usage was smart. I thought mercenaries were bought and they helped, but they didn't like cripple you. They only costed about 1,000 gold, a little more than 1,000 gold in total. So I think they paid for themselves, even the ones that you lost. So I think mercenaries were used well, unlike Marignan's mercenary usage, which were not used well at all. So that was good. Only player to try to use mages in battle. He had that one battle against Agartha where he blew him out pretty badly, but it was honestly kind of a minor loss of gold for Agartha, like only 500 in the long term. It's pretty minimal, but still, it was a defeat, and that takes turns to rebuild. What else is there to say about Fascia? Yeah, I think he lost before the game started. I think Fascia was sort of screwed from the beginning, just because of scales and pretender choice were just the worst, I think, of all four players. I think Fascia's hurt him the most. He had the fewest amount of design points to work with because he wanted his pretender out early. And the research did help. But I have to wonder if he had more design points, if he would have never been in that situation in the first place. If he just would have had a stronger core. Or if he took an Awake Expander, he would have just had more gold than Marignan could deal with. And he just ran over the guy. You know, that's the sort of thing that is interesting to wonder about, because it's like, well, what could have really been done differently? Maybe it started, way before the game even started, like just picking the wrong pretender. I don't want to say Fascia is a bad nation, because I think Fascia could do a lot. Like any nation that has air and astral, I think has got to be pretty okay. So he could do a lot as Fascia, even though he didn't have his little island, and he didn't have his extra gold site for not having an island. All that considered, I still think Fascia is pretty solid. Like, their national troops are good, better than most, better than Arcos, better than Agarthas this game. Their mages are great. Yeah, I would have tried to be more diplomatic, perhaps, with Marignan to end the war. Also, Fascia was getting gold from Ulm and Arcacephaly, but he needed more. He needed to ask for more gold. There's no reason not to ever constantly be asking your allies for more money, because generally they'll do it, and if they won't give you money, then ask for gems, because you can always use gems. Gems are always amazing. You can always put gems on your mages and have them be stronger in battle. Gems are just a power-up, always good, and people are usually more willing to part with gems than they are willing to part with money. So always ask for that too. Like, I feel like he got like 20 astral pearls from Arcacephaly. Amazing trade in Fascia's favor. Really good. So yeah, not really much else to say. Just sort of the same thing as everyone else. Expansion sucked. Needed to take more provinces. If you took more provinces, you wouldn't have been in such a bad situation. Or you would have been in a stronger position. And that's a ubiquitous comment on every player. This is a chart looking at gems. Who had what gems at the end of the game. Sorted by type. So we got blood, nature, death, astral, earth, water, air, and the red is fire. So
Luck 3 definitely contributes a lot to this. I think Ulm and Archaecephaly have a big lead, mainly because of luck. And also consider Archaecephaly and Ulm were dumping gems into Fascia, and Agartha had... So yes, really, what this... If you take anything away from this chart, it's that Luck 3 is amazing. Luck 3 will generate a lot of gems for you in a very short amount of time. Not site searching and not making mages to site search will screw you over so badly. Like, the snowball effect is immense. It's not like Ulm was spending his gems. Ulm was not spending his gems. Archaecephaly was not spending his gems either. This is just Marignon wasn't finding sites. There was that one time Marignon could have found a Fountain of Fire and he missed it. That sucked. That's such a good magic site, too. It gives you like 4 fire gems or something. It would have just been amazing. But here he is, sitting with fewer gems than Agartha is. Oh, actually, okay, Marignon made a couple items. Yeah, he made a couple items. Those items suck. Don't make those. They're terrible. Well, okay, they're not terrible, but the items you want to make as Marignon are like Fire in a Jar and the Rooster thing. That's really what you want to make. Agartha spent a lot of his gems, that's why his earth income so low. Agartha also found fantastic magical sites. Those definitely contributed to why his gem income is so good. I think Agartha's site searching was solid. Fascia never really got site searching off the ground, but he was absorbing a lot of gems through diplomacy, which is important. And Archaecephaly also found a lot of good magic sites too. Ulm found a lot. If anything bad to say about Ulm can be got from this graph, it's that this is just like, this is 205 gems worth of power that you just didn't use. It's like, your smiths, when you were invading Agartha, had 5, I think, each. Why not give them 10? You know, I mean, it's a lot of earth gems, but so what? What are you doing with them? Just letting them collect dust? No, send them out. Why not? Why not at least like one more? Same thing goes for Fascia. Like, he was sending out big armies of mages and only giving them 1 gem. Like, no way. Give them a lot more. Give them like 4. Give them like 5. What are you doing with the gems? You're in a war for your life. You know, fight or die. Marignon too. Agartha was spending his gems. Archaecephaly was about to enter into a war with Ulm, and he was bringing no mages with no gems. And he is sitting on a big bank of astral pearls he could have been using. It would have been a wipe. It would have been a terrible wipe. Anyway, so that's gonna, I think, wrap up this video. It's gone on for over an hour now, and my throat is ruined from blabbering about the faults of players who don't have very much experience in a children's video game. So, you know, who's the real loser here? Anyway, I hope you will join me for the next series between these 5 same players. I think I'll make a note of who's playing who, like who moved over to what nation. Anyway, that's it.